All right. So welcome, and we'll start off, of course, with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So
Amen.
Amen.
let's go for the screen share here. There we are. Okay, so we're onto the Shani portion now. Let's make sure we're there. There we are. Vaya alu, they went up. Just a little sort of side comment that you're always going up to Israel. I remember, growing up in South Africa, and I was a member of Habonim, and they would talk about, you always go up to the land of Israel. It's always an aliyah, both, obviously primarily spiritually, but of course you go up to Jerusalem, so that's also geographically. Vayaturu, and they scouted out, or they spied out, et haaretz, the land. Mimidbar Tzin, from Midbar Tzin, ad Rehov Lavo Chamad, up to Rehov Lavo Chamad. It's the name of a place. And we'll take a look at the Rashi here.
Yeah, from the desert of Zin.
Yes, that's true, or the wilderness of Tzin. Mimidbar Tzin ad Rehov Lavo Chamad. So Rashi tells us, Halchu begvuleha, they went around its borders. Ba'orech uverochav, both in length and in breadth. Kemin gam, like the letter gamma, the Greek letter gamma. Halchu ruach gagvul dromit, they went along the southern border. Mimikzoa mizrach, from the edge on the east, from its eastern edge, ad mikzoa ma'arav, to its western edge. This is on the south. Kamosh tziva Moshe, just as Moses had commanded when he said, Alu ze ba'negev, go up to this on the south. Derech Gavul Dromit. Now, this is Rashi's own words now. So in other words, what he meant by that was when he said Alu Ze Banegev, he meant in the direction or in the way of the southern border, Mizrachit Dromit Mizrachit, along this southern border towards the west, from east.
Is that the Neged? The Neged? Is
Yes,
that the Neged or,
yes,
or
it is.
Hebron?
Yeah,
Or
well,
Neged?
let's just wait until we get there, yes. But the word Negev also means south.
Oh,
So it also has the meaning of like a dry region, like lingov in Hebrew as a verb means to dry off. Ad
oh.
hayam, they went until the sea, which is, of course, they're talking here about the Mediterranean Sea. Shahayahu gvul ma'aravi, which was Shahayam, because the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, Ugvul Ma'aravi, is the western border. Umisham Chazru, and from that point they went back. V'halchu kol Gvul Ma'aravi, and they walked, or they went the entire western border, al Sfat Hayam, along the shore of the sea, ad Lavo Chamat, until they came to Lavo Chamat, Shahu Etzel Hor Hahar, which is nearby Hor Hahar, Mount Hor, B'Mikzoa Ma'aravit Tzfonit, which is on the west northern, in other words, the north and northwestern border. Kamo Shemefurash Begvulot Haaretz, as is designated in describing the borders of the land, but Parshat Elamaseh, in the Parsha of Elamaseh, which is coming up. So look at numbers.
How about Rabbi? How about the Philistines and the Amalekites? Did they mention them?
Well, we haven't gotten to them yet, so we don't want to anticipate
those are the people that were there at the time that they were surveying them.
Harlan, spoiler alert, okay? Okay, just hold on to your hat. Hold on to your yarmulke. All right.
Okay.
Right now we're just, the narrative is just moving us along. That all appears to be in order right now. They're doing what Moses told them to do. This is all sounding fine and dandy. All right. I mean, we have to allow the narrative to run its course. Okay. So here we go. Vaya'alu va'negev. And again, they went up in the Negev. Vayavo. Now notice, by the way, what's wrong with this word? What's
It's
wrong with this word?
singular.
Correct. It's singular. It should have said vayavo'u, but it doesn't say that. And that is what's going to generate Rashi's comment. Ad Chevron. And he came to Chevron. Vesham Achiman, Sheshai, V'Talmai, and there were Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, names Yelidei Ha'anak, children of the Anak. And of course, the word Anak is a word for giant. And then there's a sort of parenthetical statement. Excuse me. Vechevron, and Chevron, Sheva Shanim Nivnata, had been constructed 7 years, Lifnei Tzoan Mitzrayim, before Tzoan in Egypt. Again, begging for interpretation. What on earth is this doing there? So we'll see if we can piece this out. Vayavo ad Chevron. He arrived, singular, till Chevron. And in the Talmud, in Masechet Sota Lamed Dalet, it says, Kalev levado. Caleb alone, halach sham, went there. That's why it's in the singular, because it's referring to Kalev. And we'll have an allusion as to why we're singling out Kalev and no one else. Okay. V'nishtatech al kivrei avot. Well, we know who was buried in Hebron, right? The patriarchs and some of the matriarchs. So he stretched himself out. Okay, he prostrated himself on the graves of our ancestors, on our patriarchs. In other words, in prayer, he was supplicating. Shelo yehe nisat lechaveirav. And I believe it means that he wouldn't be drawn to follow his companions, liyot ba'atzatam, to be engaged in their advice. In other words, to give similar advice to theirs. V'chein hu omer. And what is the support we have? And so it says in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 1, V'lo, this is Moses talking about Kalev, V'lo eten et haaretz, and to him I will give the land, asher darachbo, on which he trod. Uchtiv, and it also goes on to say in Judges 1, Vayitnu lechalev et Chevron, and they gave to Caleb Chevron. So this all sort of fits in consistently with this explanation that we just gave. Sheva Shanim Nivnata. So what is this business of Hebron being built 7 years prior to Tzoan of Mitzrayim? And we notice here in the Talmud, in Sota Lamed Dalet, right, we have it over here too, that so Sota on page 34 must give some kind of interpretation of these particular verses. Efshar Shebana Cham et Hebron Leknan. Is it possible that Ham, remember Noah's youngest son, built Hebron for Canaan, for his son Canaan, Bno Hakatan, his youngest son, right? Canaan was Ham's youngest son. Kodem sheyivneh et so'an leMitzrayim. So Mitzrayim also was a son of Ham, Bno Hagadol. That was his oldest son. So he should be building, is that possible that he'd be building a city for his youngest son prior to building a city for his oldest son? It doesn't make sense. Ella, but the way we need to explain it is, Shahaita mevuna bechol tov al echad mishiv'ah betzoan. So the way we'd have to understand this, okay, is that it was built in every good way, right? 7 times, right? 1 in 7, betzoan of tzoan. So that's where we get this 7. Uva lahodiacha, and it comes. So this is Lauren. Unless you're catching some other translation in your English there, okay. Let me complete this, and then we can analyze it. Uva lahodiacha, and the scriptural verse is coming to tell you, Shivcha shel Eretz Yisrael. It is coming to let you know the glory of the land of Israel. It's in praise of the land of Israel and how great it is. She'en lecha trashin be'eretz Yisrael yoter mechevron, because there is a trashin means sort of a place that I don't know if we actually translate it as garbage dump or something like that, but the connotation is that. In other words, we're looking at a city that is not particularly great in the land of Israel. In other words, Hebron for the land of Israel is not such a hot place.
Here it says rocky,
Oh, thank you. Okay.
which makes sense to me with the
Right.
rest of
No,
it.
thanks. And it's much better that way. Thank you. I'm sorry. I just didn't have a chance to check the translation of that. Thank you. The fichach. Okay, so I need to put that in. Let me do that quickly. I just could not remember it. Where is this? Yeah, let's try that. There we go. I think I was mixing up my English with my Hebrew.
Yeah, trashing.
Yeah. Let's go here. Let's try this. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Okay, so in other words, non-arable is the idea here, that there is no place that is as rocky in the land of Israel from Hebron. Lefichach, and for this reason, hiktsuha likivrot meitim. That's why it was set up and designated as a necropolis.
So I was thinking that the reason it was designated related to the rocks was that you could build tombstones out of rocks and put,
Right.
and if they put rocks on the stones in those days,
Yes,
it'd
that's
be
cool.
handy.
That's cool. But remember, it was also the cave of Machpelah. So there's a cave in the rocks there. But but it says kivrot, right? The graves of the dead. Ve'ein lecha me'uleh b'chol ha'aratzot kemitzrayim, and you don't have a lovelier place amongst all the lands like Mitzrayim, like the land of Egypt. Shene'emar, me'ulah means superior, right? Something like that. Shene'emar, as it states in Genesis 13, Kagan Hashem, right? It was like a garden of Hashem, Ke'eretz Mitzrayim, like the land of Egypt. And this is where they're describing the former Sodom and Gomorrah. In other words, this is the story where Lot and Abraham have large flocks, and they realize they're going to have to part company because the shepherds are arguing with each other and fighting with each other. And Abraham says to Lot, if you go north, I'll go south. You go east, I'll go west, etc. And then it says, he looks out, Lot looks out, and he sees the plain of Sodom, and it was like the garden of Hashem, just like the land of Egypt. The Tzoan, okay, and the city of Tzoan in Egypt, he hama'ulah sheba eretz Mitzrayim. That is considered the most superior in the land of Egypt. Shesham moshav hamlachim, because there it's like that's where kings live. They live in that particular place. And how do we know that? Shene'emar, because it says, Isaiah chapter 30, Ki hayu betzoan sarav, for in Tzoan were his princes. V'haita Hebron tova mimena shiv'a chalakim. And yet, compared to Tzoan, Hebron was better than it by 7 times. So that is the sort of code that is in that verse that we just read. It doesn't follow its literal meaning. It's there to tell you how much better Hebron, for all its being this rocky area in the land of Israel, it nevertheless was better than Zoar. So again, I mean, there's certainly, it seems to, at least to my way of thinking, requires further thought. Onwards with their journey. Vayavo ad Nachal, it's going to say Nachal Eshkol. They came to the Wadi of Eshkol. Vayichrutu misham Zmora, and they cut off their Zmora. They cut off a branch, the Eshkol Anavim Echad, and a single cluster of grapes. Vayisauhu bamot bishnayim, and they carried it with a pole, by 2. You've all seen those pictures of the 2 people carrying this huge cluster of grapes on a pole. Umin harimonim, they took some pomegranates, umin hata'emin, and some figs. Let's see if there's anything here. Okay. So Zamora, so it looks like this is Sikat Geffen. So that's what it looks like to me. I think
Mine has a vav in it.
Okay, really? So
Yes, it's sin vav, like Sukkot.
Geffen?
Mm-hmm. That's what mine says.
Okay. No, I thought this yud could be just poor printing. Okay. All right. I mean, a sukkah, that is an interesting word to be used here. We usually mean it's something that's overhanging. A sukkah is from the word schach. That's where the word schach comes from. And we're talking about the stuff that's put on top to protect you from the sun. Okay.
I have a frame.
Really? Okay, thanks.
Yes.
And to me, the translation here is vine branch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The eshkol shel anavim. So the eshkol, of course, is the cluster of grapes. Talui ba. Okay. Okay. So we're talking. So when he says sukat gefen, he must be talking about this a vine branch and a cluster of something like that. What would we call it?
That's what it says here, vine branch with a cluster of grapes hanging on it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's put in a translation for there. Oops, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's not an easy word in that context. Okay. We understand what's going on here. Vayisauhu bamot bishnayim, and they carried it with a pole with 2. Mimashma shene'emar vayisauhu bamot. Okay, so he's saying, wait a second, there's some circumlocution going on here. He says from the inference, the fact that it says they carried it on a pole, right? Eini yodea shehu bishnayim. Don't I understand already that it was taking 2? In other words, why does it add the bishnayim there? That seems unnecessary. Obviously, it was through 2. Ma Talmud lomar bishnayim. So what is this bishnayim doing there with 2, literally with 2? And again, this section of this page in Sota, bishnei motot. So in other words, the shnayim, they're saying, refers to 2 poles, right? 2 poles. Ha ketzad, okay. So how does this work out? Shmone natlu eshkol echad. 8 took hold of one cluster. Natal ta'ena, they hung a fig, the echad rimon, and sorry, natlu ishkol. So 8 took the vine cluster. Echad natal ta'ena. One of them took the fig, the echad rimon, and another one took a pomegranate. Yehoshua v'chalev lo natlu klum, and Joshua and Caleb didn't take anything. Lefi shekol atzman, and here, by the way, is how they describe the two poles and why it was 8 people. See that? So that's how we have 8 of the spies carrying the cluster of grapes, and then another spy carrying a fig, and another spy carrying a pomegranate, and we have 10 of the 12 spies. So
Why didn't they just put them in a grocery bag?
there we go. Why
Could have woven one for all it,
Okay.
I mean, geez, really, I mean, grapes, a fig, and a pomegranate
They were big.
don't need to be such an
The
ordeal.
pomegranate must have been the size of a
And it says
can-
pomegranates and figs is what I have. So
Okay.
maybe more than one.
It could
So,
be.
yeah.
It could be singular in the Hebrew, but
basket full.
representing. Yeah, I don't know. Again, we let me finish the sentence, and we can go into discussion about these other things too. But it says Joshua and Caleb understood that the intent of those spies, or those other 10 spies, their whole intent was lehotzi diba nitkavnu, that their whole intention nitkavnu was to badmouth the place, to speak disparagingly. So this is how they were going to speak disparagingly, and this is why they took its fruit. Keshem shepirya mishuna, just as its fruit is extraordinary, is weird even. Kach ama mishuna. So and I think what this is saying is, just as its fruit is so huge, right, is so different in that it's so huge, kach ama mishuna, likewise its people are just as huge.
Oh, yeah.
Ve'im chafetz atal leida kama, mas'ui echad mehem. So, and if you want to know how heavy, right, the weight of one of them was, se v'lamed me'avanim shehikimu b'galgal, you can figure it out from the stones that they set up in Gilgal, in Joshua chapter 4. Heirimu lahem ish even achat min hayarden, each man brought up one stone from the Yarden, from the Jordan, al shichmo, on his shoulders. Vehikimuhu b'Gilgal, and they set it up in Gilgal. Veshiklum rabotenu, and our sages weighed them. Mishkal kol echad, the weight of each one was mem se'ah, 40 se'ahs. Ugamiri, it looks like tuna de midla inish al katfe. I think it's saying, and we derive, or we were able to figure out, right? I believe it's saying the amount of weight that a person can carry on his shoulders. A no ela shalish is only a third, masui, a third of the weight, or of what he can carry. Mimasui shemisayin oto laharim. In other words, I think what it's saying is that a person can only carry on his shoulders a third of the weight, of the burden that they help him to pick up. Again, I will defer to.
Yeah, that's what it says. If they help him, he can carry 3 times as much. Yeah.
Okay.
He can
He
carry
can
a third without
really.
help.
Oh, this seems, you're saying that if they help him.
It said, okay, I'm gonna say
Okay.
what it says. Each
Okay.
stone weighed 40 seah, and it is a fact that the load a person can carry on his shoulders is only a third of the weight
Yes.
of the load he can carry when others help him lift
There
it.
we go. That makes sense, right? That's what I thought it was saying. Oh, that's
Yeah, that's what I
how
said.
to translate it. Okay,
A third is, I just inverted it.
okay, no problem. All right, so we're talking about these people carrying these things together, and the amount that they were carrying, and the fact. And then we now know why Joshua and Caleb wouldn't have wanted to take anything, because on the surface it sounds like they're trying to show how great the place is, but the truth was they were trying to just show everyone how difficult it was and impossible it was to conquer the land. Let's keep going. See if we have anything.
The
Oh, yeah.
next one.
Yeah, we do here, up here. La makom hahu, and that particular locale, Kara Nachal Eshkol, they named it Wadi Eshkol, Al Odot HaEshkol, regarding the cluster, Asher Katum Misham B'nai Israel, which the children of Israel, that is the spies, had cut off from there. Vayashuvu mitir haaretz, and they returned from having scouted out the land. Miketz arba'im yon, at the end of 40 days. And I'm going to stop here and put in that little arrow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because there's a Rashi for that.
What, for 40 days?
Let's see.
Yep.
Mhm.
We were gone for 40 days, yeah.
40 days is an important number.
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
Rashi uses the word parasang. I don't know what that is.
Oh, a
Ooh,
Persian mile.
Persian. Oh,
Oh.
Persian mile.
Parasang, yes. Okay. All right. Let's
Better
stop
write that down.
here. I'm going to stop the stop the share, and stop the recording.
Okay.
Here we go.